Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive with us. This time, we're going to be looking at the story of Sarah Jones, from
Uh,
Homeless to Harvard.
oh, yeah, absolutely. A fascinating story, really is.
Yeah, and we've got some excerpts here from the book From Homeless to Harvard, A Story of Resilience.
Okay, great.
And then also some, additional research on kind of the systemic issues that kind of play into these types of stories.
Yeah, that's really important to get that context too, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Not just this one individual, but like, how does this fit into a bigger picture?
Right, and I think, we can all kind of relate to, you know, wanting to better ourselves
Yeah,
and having these aspirations and
yeah,
goals, and sometimes it feels like the world is against you.
yeah.
And I think this story really kind of hits on that in a powerful way.
It does. It's like this incredible story of resilience,
Yeah.
right? But then also, like you said, layered on top of that are these broader issues of, poverty and homelessness and the education system, all these things that sort of come together.
Right, and so let's just dive right in, I guess. The book starts out giving us a picture of Sarah's early life, and it wasn't pretty. Her parents were struggling with unemployment and addiction, and it was just a really unstable environment.
Unfortunately, a story we hear far too often, right?
Yeah.
I mean, when you look at the research on youth homelessness, it's very clear that family instability is one of the biggest predictors.
It makes sense though, right? If you don't have that stable foundation as a kid,
Exactly.
like how are you supposed to build a life for yourself?
That's not just about a roof over your head. It's about that emotional support, that sense of security that lets you grow and thrive.
And Sarah had none of that really. I mean, when she was just 14, she loses her mother to substance abuse,
Oh, wow.
and then her father ends up abandoning the family.
It's just heartbreaking. And sadly, it's not uncommon. When we talk about kids aging out of the foster care system, we're talking about thousands of young people who are essentially on their own. And without that family support or community resources, homelessness becomes a very real risk for a lot of them.
And that's exactly what happened to Sarah. The book doesn't shy away from the difficult realities. She's in shelters, she's sleeping on park benches, constantly worrying about where her next meal is going to come from.
And just the constant stress of trying to stay safe,
Yeah,
right? Especially as a young woman on the streets, it's incredibly vulnerable.
absolutely. But here's the incredible thing. Even in the midst of all that chaos, Sarah clung to education like it was a lifeline.
It's interesting how that often becomes a source of stability for homeless youth.
Hmm.
School provides structure, a sense of routine, and a place to belong. Plus, they can access resources there that they might not be able to find elsewhere.
Right. It's like that one normal thing in a very abnormal situation. And the book really emphasizes Sarah's dedication, carrying all her belongings around, often wearing the same clothes, but still she manages to maintain a perfect GPA.
Wow, that's incredible.
Talk about determination,
I
right?
have to wonder where that inner strength comes from. I mean, to be able to focus on schoolwork with all that going on in your life.
I think it speaks to the power of hope, maybe. That even in the darkest of circumstances, there's this belief that things can get better, that education can be a way out.
Yeah, and maybe even a sense of purpose, that by achieving in school, she was proving something to herself and maybe even to the world, that she wasn't going to be defined by her circumstances.
Absolutely. And one of the things the book highlights is the role that public libraries played in Sarah's life. They became her sanctuary, a place where she could go to get warm, use the internet study in peace.
Libraries are amazing resources. They're like this great equalizer, offering free access to information and technology for everyone.
Right. And for Sarah, it was more than just about books. It was a safe haven, a place to escape the harsh realities of the streets.
It's like they provided that sense of normalcy that she was so desperately craving.
Exactly. And I think it's a good reminder for all of us about how important these community resources are, especially for vulnerable populations.
Absolutely, we often take them for granted. But for someone like Sarah, they can literally be life-changing.
Okay, so let's talk about the turning point in Sarah's story. It all starts at school with her English teacher, Mrs. Carter. Mrs. Carter starts to notice that Sarah is exhausted all the time.
She's probably the only adult who's paying attention, right?
Right, and thankfully she is.
Yeah.
Sarah ends up confiding in Mrs. Carter about her homelessness.
It's amazing how the one act of trust can change everything.
It really is, and Mrs. Carter doesn't hesitate. She immediately starts connecting Sarah with support services, like a youth mentorship program.
That's what I love about this story. It shows how one caring adult can make a world of difference.
It's like a domino effect of positive intervention.
And think about the ripple effects, too. Mrs. Carter's actions didn't just impact Sarah. They potentially impacted everyone. Sarah went on to help through her own work later on.
It's a powerful thought, right? That we all have the potential to create these ripples of positive change.
Absolutely. Sometimes all it takes is that one person who's willing to step up and say, hey, I see you, I care about you, and I'm going to do something to help.
And that's what Mrs. Carter did. Through the mentorship program, Sarah meets Mr. Blake. He becomes this incredibly important figure in her life, starts encouraging her to think bigger, to set higher goals.
And I bet that was a totally new concept for her, someone actually believing in her potential like that.
Right. The book says that he even suggested applying to Ivy League schools, like Harvard.
Wow, imagine that. Going from worrying about where you're going to sleep at night to someone saying you could go to Harvard.
It's mind-blowing, right? And I think it speaks to the power of mentorship, that ability to see potential in someone even when they can't see it in themselves.
Absolutely, it can be truly transformative. Mentors can help us to break free from those limiting beliefs we hold about ourselves and open our minds to possibilities we never even considered.
And I think that's exactly what Mr. Blake did for Sarah. He planted a seed. This idea that maybe, just maybe, a future at Harvard wasn't so far-fetched after all.
But let's be real for a second. Applying to college is stressful enough under normal circumstances, but trying to do it while you're homeless, that's a whole other level of challenge.
No kidding. I mean, the book talks about Sarah spending late nights in the library, writing these college essays fueled by sheer willpower.
It's just incredible. You have to have so much grit and determination to push through all that.
Absolutely. And what's even more remarkable is that Sarah didn't shy away from her experiences in those essays.
Oh, really?
Yeah, she wrote about her struggles with homelessness, with honesty and vulnerability.
Wow, that takes a lot of courage.
It does, and I think that authenticity is what really resonated with the admissions committees.
It makes you wonder how many amazing stories are out there from students who've overcome incredible odds, but maybe they don't have the support or the resources to tell their stories effectively.
Right, and that's why programs like the one Sarah benefited from are so important. They provide that guidance and encouragement that can make all the difference.
Absolutely. It's not just about academic potential. It's about recognizing the whole person and the journey they've been on.
And in Sarah's case, it was clear that she had something special, not just intellectually, but in terms of her character and resilience.
Yeah, and the book mentions that her teachers and community members, they rallied around her, writing glowing letters of recommendation.
They saw her potential, and they wanted to help her succeed.
It's beautiful to see that kind of community support.
It really is, and I think it speaks to the power of human connection, that when we come together and support each other, amazing things can happen.
I totally agree.
So picture this, Sarah sitting at a computer, heart pounding, nervously checking her email.
Oh, the anticipation.
And then there it is, an email from Harvard University.
No way.
The book describes her just bursting into tears of joy as she reads those words. Congratulations, Sarah. We are thrilled to welcome you to the Harvard class of year.
I'm getting chills just thinking about it.
It's like this culmination of years of struggle and hard work and unwavering hope.
And it's not just a victory for Sarah. It's a victory for everyone who's ever doubted the potential of homeless youth.
Right, it challenges our preconceived notions and forces us to recognize that talent and brilliance can exist anywhere.
Absolutely. And it shows that with the right support and opportunities, anyone can achieve their dreams.
And Sarah's story quickly went viral. You know, people were captivated by her journey, her resilience.
It's a story that gives you hope, right?
It does, and it shines a much-needed spotlight on the issue of youth homelessness.
Which is often invisible, right? We tend to look away from it.
Yeah, but Sarah's story makes it impossible to ignore.
And it reminds us that behind the statistics are real people with real dreams and aspirations.
So before we move on to Sarah's life at Harvard and beyond, I think it's important to just take a moment to reflect on what we've learned so far.
Absolutely. This is a lot to unpack.
It is, and I think it's important to remember that Sarah's story isn't just about individual resilience.
Right.
It's also about the systemic issues that contribute to homelessness and poverty.
The lack of affordable housing, the failures of the foster care system, the need for better mental health and addiction services.
Exactly. Those are all things that we need to be talking about and addressing as a society.
It's not enough to just celebrate individual success stories.
Yeah.
We need to be working to create a world where everyone has the opportunity to thrive.
And that's a conversation that we're going to continue in part 2 of this deep dive.
Looking forward to it.
So stay tuned.
Welcome back. You know, we left off with Sarah getting that acceptance to Harvard.
Yeah, like what a moment, right?
It's almost hard to imagine the range of emotions she must have been feeling.
Seriously, from homelessness to Harvard? Like,
Yeah.
what must that transition have been like?
Right. You'd think it'd be like stepping onto another planet, practically.
Total culture shock.
But from what I read, Sarah actually adapted really well.
Really?
Yeah, she didn't let her background define her experience.
Huh. So no imposter syndrome.
Doesn't seem like it.
Yeah.
She had this quiet confidence, you know? Like her past had actually prepared her in a way that many of her peers hadn't been.
Interesting. I hadn't thought about it like that.
It's like all those challenges she faced, it built up this resilience in her.
Right. Like she had this grit that you don't develop just from studying hard.
Exactly. And thankfully, she didn't have to worry about tuition or anything.
Oh, right, with the financial aid.
Yeah, she could really just focus on her studies and making the most of the opportunity.
So what did she end up majoring in?
Social sciences,
Figures?
right? Like, it's no surprise given everything she went through. She wanted to understand those systems that contribute to poverty and homelessness.
Try to make a difference.
Exactly. She wasn't content with just personal success. She wanted to use her education to create real change in the world.
And that's something I think we're seeing more and more these days.
Yeah, this idea of transformative learning.
Like, education isn't just about getting a good job.
Right. It's about empowering people to think critically, to challenge the status quo and work towards a more just and equitable society.
And Sarah definitely embodied that. The book talks about how she was actively involved in speaking out.
Sharing her story,
Yeah, she didn't shy away from her past.
which I'm sure was difficult at times.
Right. But she recognized the power of her story, to inspire others to raise awareness about homelessness.
Because when you hear a story like Sarah's, it's hard to just see it as a statistic anymore. You connect with it on a human level,
And that's what she wanted people to do.
to see the human faces behind the issue.
And she didn't just speak at like small gatherings or anything. She was at
Oh.
conferences on TV.
That takes guts.
It does,
Yeah.
to stand up in front of all those people and share such personal experiences.
But I think that's what makes her story so compelling. That raw honesty and vulnerability.
It's inspiring.
It is, and it's a reminder that advocacy can take many forms.
Right? It's not just about protesting or lobbying.
It can be about sharing your story,
Mm.
using your platform to amplify the voices of others.
Like Sarah did.
And her message resonated with people.
She touched so many lives just by being willing to share her truth.
And it really challenged those stereotypes about homeless people.
Right, like the assumption that they're lazy or that they somehow deserve to be in that situation.
Sarah's story shattered those myths,
It showed that anyone can end up in a difficult situation.
and that everyone deserves compassion and support.
So we've seen Sarah go from homelessness to Harvard to becoming this powerful advocate for social change.
It's an incredible journey.
It really is, but it's important to remember that her story isn't over.
Right. There's still so much more to explore.
Like, what did she do after graduating from Harvard?
How did she continue to use her experiences and education to make a lasting impact?
And that's what we'll be diving into in the next part of our deep dive.
We'll uncover how Sarah dedicated herself to creating real change.
To addressing those systemic issues that she became so passionate about.
It's a story of giving back, of empowering others, and continuing to defy expectations.
Stay tuned. Okay, so we're back and ready to wrap up Sarah's story. We've seen her go from homelessness to Harvard, to becoming this incredible advocate. But the question is, what happened next? Did she go on to, climb the corporate ladder, become a high-powered lawyer or something?
Well, Sarah's story is a good reminder that success doesn't always look the same for everyone.
Right.
And throughout her journey, she's been driven by this desire to make a real difference in the world.
To give back.
Exactly.
So not exactly the Wall Street type, then.
Nope, not quite. Actually, Sarah's path aligns with a growing trend, especially among young people from marginalized backgrounds.
Oh, yeah.
They're choosing careers that focus on social impact rather than just personal gain.
That's awesome. So tell me, what did Sarah actually do after graduating?
Well, right out of Harvard, she founded a nonprofit,
Wow.
and it was specifically aimed at supporting homeless youth.
It's like everything came full circle.
Yeah, it really did. She took all that lived experience and turned it into a force for change.
So what kind of support did her organization provide?
Well, they took a pretty holistic approach, recognizing that homelessness is complex, So they offered educational support, mentorship programs.
Like what she had.
Exactly. But also job training assistance with finding housing.
Wow. So they were really trying to address all the different aspects of the problem.
Yeah, it was about breaking that cycle of poverty, giving these young people a real chance at a different future.
It's amazing to think that she created the kind of support system that she never had.
It is, and I think that's what made her organization so effective, having someone who had actually been through it leading the way.
Right. That lived experience is so valuable.
Absolutely, she brought this deep understanding and empathy to the work.
And word got out about what she was doing right.
Oh yeah, her story and her organization started gaining national attention.
That's incredible.
It shows what can happen when you combine a powerful personal story with effective action.
So she was speaking at conferences and stuff.
More than that, she was on TV advising policymakers.
Wow, she really became a leading voice in the fight against youth homelessness.
She did, and it all started with that one acceptance letter to Harvard.
It's mind-blowing when you think about it. From
Sure.
sleeping on park benches to changing the world,
It's a powerful reminder that potential exists everywhere.
and that even in the face of incredible adversity, we all have the ability to make a difference.
Absolutely, and Sarah's story is a challenge to all of us.
In what way?
I would ask us, what are WE doing to create opportunities for others?
To support organizations that are working to address these issues.
Exactly, it's a call to action.
And I think that's a great note to end on.
I agree.
Sarah's journey has been an inspiration.
And a reminder that change is possible.
But it's up to each of us to do our part to make that change happen.
So let's get to work.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the life of Sarah Jones.
It's been a privilege.
And remember, no matter how challenging your circumstances may seem, never give up on your dreams. Keep striving for a better future for yourself and for the world. Until next time.